Well, hello and welcome to Blue Ridge. My name's Jeremy. I'm one of the pastors and teachers here at Blue Ridge. If you are new here, we are glad that you could join us. Our mission as a church is to help people follow Jesus. We do this by equipping disciples, that is current followers of Jesus, to make other disciples. And so what you see here as we gather in circles around tables with one another is us trying to be faithful to what we believe God has asked us to do as a church. You see, part of making disciples, we believe it is essential, is connection. We can't do this alone. And so this, even on a Sunday morning, it's not the end all be all of connection, but it is a part of connecting. And we think that's vitally important. We also believe that that if we're going to engage in spiritual conversations out in the places where we work, eat, play, and live, that we need to be able to do that with each other here. And so being able to not just listen to someone teach at us the entire time, but to begin some of those conversations here allows us to equip and to be trained to have these types of conversations here so that we can do it out there in the real world where we live Monday through Saturday. And so what we have seen through the several years of doing this is that it helps if we have at least 4 people at every table. And so if you're a regular here, you know what I'm going to ask you to do next. I'm going to ask you in a moment here to stand up. You're guys just going to all look around. You're going to say hey to the people at your table. You're going to say hey to people at other tables, but really be intentional, looking around to see if there are other people that you can invite to come sit with you, or if your table is too maxed out and you can go and join someone else. Let's be those type of people that help make other people feel invited in, especially if we're a regular. So get you guys to stand on up and say hey to each other, say hey to people at other tables. Awesome. So go ahead and make your way on back. So while you're doing that, remember, would you grab a card, fold it in half, write your name on there. I guarantee there's someone at your table that's forgotten your name already. So help them out in that space. While you guys are doing that, welcome to those of you watching online. We are excited you're joining us. Drop your name in the comments below. Say, hey, we'd love to help you get connected. If this is one of the primary ways in which you join with us is online. So, I don't think since the beginning of the year we've actually began this part of a service with kind of an icebreaker question. So we were doing a little different rhythm at the first 6 weeks of this year. And so I wanted to start off with that today. So here's the question I have for you guys to begin at your tables. The question is this: where have you experienced growth in your life? Now, this is a general, wide open question. This doesn't need to be recent. We don't just need to talk about spiritual growth. Just anywhere in which you, big or small, you've experienced growth, significant. Maybe there's growth relationally. Maybe you were distant between you and a parent, you and a sibling, you and a roommate, and there's been growth in closeness there more than it was in another season. Or maybe it's something like on the complete opposite, something that's way less significant. Maybe there's been growth in a hobby, sewing, fly fishing, something like that. You've become better. Or maybe it's someplace in between, like with, athletics or say scholastically in school, like there was a subject you were weak in and now you're stronger in it. Maybe your time in a certain discipline in athletics has gone down, your weight has gone up, and maybe it's just pure in the mid, like that's where you've seen growth. I'm just joking about that last one. So, but where have you seen growth? Wide open. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes, probably not gonna be enough time for all of you to get around. That's okay, this is meant to just get the discussion started. So go for it, 3 minutes, where have you seen growth? 1 minute. Okay, I'm gonna interrupt you wherever you're at your tables. So, for me, it actually comes in a surprising area. It comes in this realm of woodworking, something I had zero interest in for like the first 39 years of my life. And then my wife will tell you I turned 40 and was like, hey, I think I'm a woodworker now. And literally, it's amazing what YouTube will empower you to do. And so, yeah, I wouldn't call myself by any means a woodworker or anything beyond a novice woodworker, but I've seen growth in that area. In fact, through the years, like the last 6 years, just kind of like taking on just different projects. The wall, the wainscoting right there was one of the first ones I did in my home. Actually, even this ladder right here was just normal 2x4s from Lowe's that figured out how to kind of age, make look a little bit like decoration, turn it into a blanket hanger. Other small projects like this is our television in our living room, and built this frame to make it look more like a picture frame when we're not using it. So it's not just like you have a TV hanging on the wall there. Other larger projects like this one, this kitchen island that I did there. I did not do, full disclosure, I did not do the top. That was beyond what I had the ability or the tools to do, but building the cabinets from scratch and all of that, something, again, watched a YouTube video, thought, I could do that. And I did that. Small decorations like this, just little, random, this hexagon platter, decorative kind of things, to even like this. This is some outdoor planters to help raise money for a missions trip my daughter was taking last summer. I built these cedar planters, outdoor planters, did things like that. But again, went from like zero interest in this kind of stuff to in my 40s over the last 6 years, just doing kind of these woodworking projects. Now, I bring this up, this whole idea up, because today we're beginning this series called The Four Soils. That's a parable of Jesus's. It's all about this idea of growth. Okay, it's all about this idea of growth. Now, if you don't know what a parable is simply a story about the physical world that helps illustrate a spiritual truth. And Jesus used them often. So why would we pick this one? Why this parable? Well, Jesus used somewhere around 30 parables in his teachings throughout the Gospels. And depending on how tightly you define parables, that may have been, a little less or a little bit more, but somewhere around 30 parables we have recorded for us that Jesus used in his teachings. And of the 30, none of them are in all four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, where we get most of our information about Jesus' life. And only 4 of the parables are even in 3 of the books, and this is one of the 4. So we know that it must be something important if it's one of just a handful of parables that were included in 3 of the Gospels, 3 of the things that explain Jesus' teachings and life to us. And so we know that there's something God must have for us in this. Now, beyond that, and maybe more applicable to us, is the fact that I believe this parable touches on something that I think is represented by the motivation that brings many of us here today. You see, I believe many of us are here because we desire growth. We desire a growing, intimate, thriving relationship with God. I believe that's many of our, in fact, I would even say most of our, what we'd say our motivation is for being here. Now, I know that's not everyone. I know that's not everyone here. I know some of you, you're here because of some expectation of someone else, friends, family, the school you go to, something like that. Parents expect you to be here, things like that. I get that. But I would argue that even you, if you truly believed that a growing intimate relationship could be had with the one who created you, like if you fully believed that that was possible, you would want and desire that. And I believe for the rest of us that if I were to ask you the question, like, why do you show up? I don't believe any of us would answer, you know what? It's because I just want an average relationship with God. I'm just kind of like right about here and I'm good. I think most of us would say we're here because we want to grow in our relationship with God. We want a thriving, intimate relationship with Him. In fact, if you've been here for years and plugged in like myself and my family, you've probably been here and plugged in because you feel like this is a place where you believe you've found a place where you can grow and thrive in your relationship with Him, like I do, like I feel like I have found in this over the last 2+ decades. If you've recently moved to town or you've left another church and you're checking out things, I believe you're looking for a place. You would say you're looking for a place where you and your family can grow and thrive in their relationship with God. I believe if you're thinking about leaving Blue Ridge, I believe for most of us that would be because you believe that there's possibly another environment, another place, another community, another church that you might be able to thrive and grow in your relationship more than here. I believe that we would say one of our primary motivations for being in an environment like this regularly is because we want to grow and thrive in an intimate relationship with God. And here's the deal. It may be obvious. The good news is that Jesus desires the same thing for us. He wants us to experience growth. He wants us to experience that intimate, thriving relationship with Him and His Father. That's what He desires for us. And so He shares this parable of the 4 soils with His disciples because he wants them to see that there are these things that can stand in the way, that can get in the way of us experiencing what He and we desire, this growing relationship with God. That there are these things that can hijack the thing that God's begun to do in us. There's things that can step in and kind of rob us of what we hope we can experience in a relationship with Him. And so it's out of that desire that Jesus gives this parable of the 4 soils. And so over the next couple of months, we're going to be looking at these 4 soils. And you say, like, we're going to spend a couple of months in one parable. Yes, we're going to spend a couple of months in one parable. You see, at the beginning of the year, very intentionally, we kind of looked broad at the book of John. In 21 days, we went through 21 chapters collectively together and just kind of went from one to another. But now what we want to do is we want to exercise another muscle. And that is, rather than go broad, we want to start to dig into a very specific this very specific parable of Jesus's and see what it is as we dig into it, what it is He might have for us. And our hope and our desire as we go through this is one, some of us, we may have that aha moment where we go, oh, this is why I've not experienced the growth that I desired and wanted in my relationship with Him. For others of us, we might go, you know what? I now see the pitfalls and the snags that are out there that could keep me from experiencing what I desire and Jesus desires for me. And for all of us, we hope to be equipped with the tools to help other people navigate these snags, these places that can come that will rob us and rob them of experiencing what God truly has for them in a relationship with Him. So that's a hope and desire over the next couple of months as we jump into this 4 soils series. So before we continue today, would you pray with me? Jesus, I am thankful for the ways in which you reveal yourself to us. And you use all sorts of different ways, whether it was coming to earth as a human being, leaving heaven, taking on the form of us, as we read in John, or whether it is in the using physical illustrations to help us see these spiritual truths. And so, Jesus, I really do believe there are things that you want to reveal about yourself and for us and what you desire desire for us through this. And so, God, would you give us the ears to hear and the eyes to see what it is you have for us? And would you move us to a place through the power of your Spirit where all of us, no matter where we are in our journey with or towards you, would be open to what you may want to show us through this parable of the four soils. So would you begin today? It's in your name we pray. Amen. So I want to begin this week, and we're going to kind of look at a broad overview of this parable. Now, for some of us, this may be familiar, so this is just a kind of a refamiliarizing ourselves with this parable. Others of us, this might be brand new, and so this is a way for us to kind of get a broad view of this. And so don't stress if you don't understand everything or see everything right away. That's okay, because we're going to be in this for a bit. This is about the broad kind of overview of this. And so to begin that broad overview, I actually want to read one of the three accounts. It's actually Mark's account of this parable. I want to read this from up front. And so Mark chapter 4, and I'm just going to read right through this. And Jesus, he's beginning with this parable of these that includes these four soils. He's beginning by speaking to a very large crowd, okay? And so he says this to this large crowd. He says, listen, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow, but when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants so that they did not bear grain. Still other seed fell on good soil. It came up, grew, and produced a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, some 100 times. Then Jesus said, whoever has ears to hear, let them hear, okay? So Jesus shares this with a crowd, like I said, and then what we see is that like literally nobody in the crowd gets this, including his disciples. They're like, what was that weird metaphor, whatever you call that, Jesus, about the soils and the farmer and all of that? Like, we don't get it. And so Jesus, a little while later, which was with a much smaller crowd that included his 12 closest disciples, he explains the spiritual significance or implications behind this soil. And he says this in verse 14 in chapter 4. He says, the farmer sows the word. That is the word of God. Some people, so we know that the soils are these different stages, they represent people. Some people are like the seeds along the path where the word is sown. As soon as they hear it, Satan comes and takes away the word that was sown in them. Others, like the seeds sown on rocky places, hear the word and at once receive it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. Still others, like the seed sown among the thorns, hear the word, but the worries of life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desires for other things come in and choke the word, making it unfruitful. Others, like the seed sown on good soil, hear the word, accept it, and it produces a crop, some 30, some 60, some 100 times what was sown. And so we see exactly what I stated in the beginning. This parable reveals to us is Jesus' heart. You read through it and you see immediately. We know his heart is that every single one of us would become that fourth soil, that soil where that seed falls on good soil and it goes deep and it germinates and the plant comes up and the roots go down, and it doesn't just stay a plant by itself, but it starts to produce this harvest that's 30, that's 60, that's 100 times. In fact, again, I think if I were to ask which soil would you, of all these soils, would you desire to be? I think most would say, well, I think soil 4 is what if that's an option for me, I'd like soil 4, right? I think that's what we would do. But the reality is that even though that's what Jesus wants, that's what many of us desire, the reality is, and what Jesus is doing is saying, hey, but there are these other places. There are these other soils, there's these other spots where the seed can fall that can keep us from becoming what both we and Jesus desire in us. And so his heart in this is to help us see that, to avoid it or to move from it in this space so that we can all become that soil number 4, the one that produces a harvest. So here's what I want you to do at your table. I'm gonna give you guys 8 minutes to do this. You're gonna do this at your table. I want you to read one of the other gospel accounts. I told you it was in 3. So we have Luke 8, 4 through 15, and Matthew 3, 1, 9, and then skip the middle like 8 or 9 verses, and then pick up back in 18 through 23, because that's the meat of the parable. So One person read out loud one of those two. Don't read both of them, you're not gonna have time. Read one of them. And then, in fact, it'd be good if you pulled out a piece of paper from the middle right now and maybe labeled 1 and 2 on the front, 3 and 4 on the back. As a table, describe the main elements that make up each of the first 3 soils. Like, what are the kind of the main elements that you see in there that make up the elements in the soils? And what do they mean? Jesus, in the second half, just like in Mark, he's gonna explain the spiritual significance behind each one. So based on Jesus's explanation, what do they mean as you guys see at your table? So I'm gonna give you 8 minutes to do this at your table. If you don't get through all of it, no worries. Again, we're gonna be here for a while, so it's okay for us to like wrestle with this and not get through everything today. But start today. Go ahead and I'm gonna give you 8 minutes. Go for it, guys. Halfway, you got about 4 minutes left. 1 minute left. Okay, I'm gonna interrupt you wherever you're at. Like I said, if you didn't make it through, don't stress about it. We're gonna be here long enough to unpack these. We're just looking at the broad overview today. But what I wanna do is, I wanna kind of help like add some other handles to this. And so this is by no means gospel truth. This is just me and my experience of the last 30 plus years of being a follower of Jesus and the last 20 plus years of doing what I do in walking with people as a pastor and a teacher, that I've seen as I look at these soils. These are the groups that I see kind of most clearly in each kind of category of soil. Now again, by no means are these the only groups, or that one person who might be in this group can't be over here too. It's just what I see as kind of the most clearly defined as I move through it. And so I want to give you some labels that might help you. So go ahead and write these down as you maybe on the card you have. So soil one, the footpath one, is I see those, the title there is those investigating. Those who have yet to say, the people that would say, yeah, I'm not a follower of Jesus, and I really know that I'm not a follower of Jesus. In fact, I know there are some of you here right now that would be in this category because we've talked. And you would say very clearly that, yeah, I'm not a follower of Jesus, but you're here and you keep on showing up to environments like these. Maybe you're in the encounter group. Maybe you're talking with friends and having that follow Jesus more like you know they follow Jesus in a significant way in their life, and you're having these conversations with them, or a coworker or somewhere else. You're hearing the truth of the message about God, about Jesus and all these things, and you're investigating and wrestling with, could this actually be true? And so while that's happening, what Jesus is making us aware of with this path soil is that there's this thing, and this may sound weird to some of us, but there is a spiritual battle that's happening. That the evil one doesn't want that seed to take any type of root. Doesn't want it to begin to germinate in any type of way, to produce anything. And so what I see and what I've seen often is there is a person that's investigating, that's seeking this stuff out, and then something happens along the way and they kind of disconnect and they end up missing out on what Jesus wanted for them and what Jesus wanted to show them, because like in the parable, the bird comes along and takes the seed. And next week, we're gonna dive into this path or this soil a little deeper. We're gonna look at it, and we're gonna look at if this is us, how we can stay in the process of investigation, while also if we're close to someone that this is where they're at, how we can help them in this journey of investigation along the way. Soil two, the one that's associated with the rocky stuff. This one is oftentimes, again, not only, but I see this often play out in the new follower. Maybe you were baptized last week. The newly baptized. Maybe it's been in the last couple of years you've come to faith in Jesus and you were baptized. Maybe you even shared your story here or somewhere else. And there is, as described in this one, there is this joy, there is this excitement, there is this life, there is this energy. And then the hard stuff starts to show up in this new relationship with Jesus. We talked about this a little bit last week. We talked about Jesus' baptism and then the days in the desert that would follow. And those days in the desert can come because of life having to change because of this new relationship with Jesus, friends and family, and how they look at us and treat us differently because of this new faith that we profess to. That Jesus can come in this new faith and say, hey, you're a new creation, so I'm inviting you to live in new ways, and some of these new ways can get really scary and really costly, and the fear can take over, and I see oftentimes in this soil, the rocky soil, what ends up happening is this excitement fades away with a little no here, a little no there, because what Jesus may be asking us to do next feels a little too costly. And what began to sprout up quickly shrivels away because there weren't the roots that there needed to be. Maybe some of you, you're here, but you remember when you were first new in the faith and there was this joy, there was this excitement, there was this thing. And if you're honest, you also know those moments early on where you felt like God was asking you to take a step that just felt way too costly. And rather than lean in and say yes, you said no. And you sit here while you're here in person, what life was there has shriveled up. What excitement was there and joy was there is a distant memory. We're gonna be looking at this soil. We're gonna be going, what if that's happened to us? What if for the new follower, the one that's just been baptized, how do we keep from becoming our story? And how do we help those? Because it's not just for the pastors. It's for every single one of us who are more established to help those that are new, to give them the things that they need to help equip them so that this isn't how their story plays out. The third soil, and probably my most controversial title, the mature follower. And I put it in quotes, the mature follower. And I'm not saying maturity by how the Bible would define maturity. I'm talking about maturity in the way that Western Christianity often defines maturity, and that's the length of time usually that we've been following Jesus. Because this is the first soil with the thorns that we see that there's been, seems like a more extended amount of time, that there's been something that's been established, that there's something that's really started to grow, roots that have gone down, but along the way, there's also something that starts to grow with it. These thorns, these thorn bushes. And Jesus identifies these as three different things: the worries in life, the deceitfulness of riches, and the pursuit of other pleasures. And these things come in and they begin to choke out what used to be well-established life. And if it was bearing fruit at one time, even that fruit gets choked out. And guys, if I'm honest, while the other two are painful to watch, this one tends to hurt me the most because these tend to be people that I've walked alongside for years. This tends to be people that we've served alongside of each other. We've grown to be friends. We've led things together. We've moved through life, through seasons. And I watch as what was once thriving, these thorns, these worries, the cares of this world choke the life right out of. And I'm not saying this in a judgmental way because I believe this is the soil that has the broadest application to most of us in this room, including myself. And I know that Jesus wants so much more than for the cares of this world to come and choke out what was once possibly thriving. Which brings me to the fourth soil, the good soil. And I've labeled this one the disciple maker. The disciple maker, because this is the thing. You've heard our definition, or our mission as a church is helping people follow Jesus by equipping disciples, that is current followers of Jesus, to make other disciples. It is the fourth soil. This is that soil. This is what we believe God has called us to, that God has called us to become a people. And you can go back to that one. This disciple-making soil that is, the seed lands in good soil and it grows up and the roots go deep and it starts to produce not just a small harvest, but a harvest of 30, of 60, of 100 times that original seed, because it's not just moving to the next generation, but it's moving from generation to generation to generation because of what God is partnering with the disciple maker to do. This is what Jesus is inviting every single one of us into without exception. This is the living that is really living, is in this place of that fourth soil. This is the life in all its fullness that he talks about in John 10:10. That disciple-making soil. This is why, if you were here last week at our baptism services are usually one of our most inspirational services. Why? Not because it's the full picture of what a disciple maker does or is or things like that, but it starts to pull back the curtain a little bit so that we get glimpses into people that are living in this place of soil 4 and the beginning of this harvest is starting to be produced. We get to see pictures like this of Sarah Manmoran, and who just a couple years prior to this was in that same feeding trough that we used to baptize people in, but was in there just a couple years ago herself. And now, last week, was getting the opportunity to baptize her 23-year-old daughter. There's a production, there's a harvest that's being produced through it. We see pictures like this of John and Melissa and Carter, Melissa's son. John and his wife, Debbie, who have been a part of Blue Ridge, who serve in all sorts of different places. And one of those environments is Encounter. In Encounter as table leaders. And they've been invited to be a part of this moment with Melissa and baptizing her. Carter, her son, who was a central key role in his own journey, even as a teenager, his faith being that helped his mom move to new places. This is pictures of what Soil 4 gets to look like and what the disciple maker gets invited into, and the life that they get to live and pass on to other people. Pictures like this of Crystal standing there with Summer, who shared her story in this service here at New London last week. And Crystal there supporting her. Crystal, who's someone for years has poured into women, mentoring them of all ages. And now we get to see as she's there with Summer, a newer follower of Jesus, sharing the journey God has taken her on. This is pictures of the harvest. Again, this isn't the fullness of all the harvest, but it's glimpses of the life that Jesus invites us into, the impact that Jesus invites us to have with him. And it's not just this environment. Every Tuesday, I get to lead a meeting with our BR team, and it's not the only leaders around here, but it's 30 of the leaders that I kind of have direct responsibility over. And I often begin that meeting by asking the question, where do you see God at work in people around you? Where do you see him moving and transforming and changing people? And without fail, I watch time and time again with excitement and emotion as these people who've been followers of Jesus, some of them for decades, share story after story after story out of excitement of what they see God doing in and around them with the people in their lives, how he's transforming and changing them. I'll tell you, to a person, they would tell you, it's almost better watching God transform someone else than their own story of personal transformation, because it's what we were designed to do. We were designed in this place by Jesus to say, hey, I'm gonna partner with you in a world broken by sin to help come alongside other people and watch them be transformed as you live out your calling as the fourth soil, this good soil, this soil that produces a harvest 30, 60, and 100 times. So here's what we'd love to do. Here's how we would want to proceed or wrap up today. Would you take a look at those first three soils? And would you just kind of, if you wrote it down on a card, would you just look at them? And let's kind of exclude soil 4 for right now, okay? Because I believe no matter how long we exist in soil 4, it's always a place where we could come back and find ourselves in one of these other soils. But I want to ask you this question. You're not going to share this at your table. This is going to be between you and God. Just circle, of the first three soils, which are you most susceptible to becoming, to stepping into? Maybe you're investigating, so that might be soil 1, or maybe you're newly baptized, new to the faith. That might be soil number 2. Maybe you're what we would call mature and established, and so it might be soil number 3. Those don't have to be, you could be in another one too. Where do you feel like you might be most susceptible? Because all of us are susceptible to one of those other soils. We just take a moment, look at that, ask God which one you might be most susceptible to. Just take a minute. Whatever you circled, Jesus desires so much more than that for you. Jesus' dream for you, with the way that he has wired you and gifted you and knit you together in your mother's womb before anyone ever knew your name, he designed you to live in that place in soil 4. I'm telling you, it is the place where we truly experience life. And that's his invitation for each one of us. So here's what we'd love you to do this week. This week, would you read each of the gospel accounts of the 4 soils twice this week? Shouldn't take you that long. 5 minutes each day, go through it. Matthew, Mark, Luke, they're gonna bring it up on the side screen, so you wanna take a picture of that, you can, so you have that. There's 3 of them, so if you read 1 a day, it'll take you 6 days to read through them each twice. And let's just begin this journey together of just going, okay, God, what do you have for me? What do you want to teach me with? Because it's not just about me, but it's about me being equipped to also help others to experience Jesus' dream of all of us living in that 4th soil. Would you pray with me? Jesus, thank you so much for today. Thank you so much for the creativity in the way that you spoke and that you taught. Thank you for bringing things down to a level that we could begin to understand them and practically engage with them. And so I pray for us as we enter into the next couple of months, this would go deep into our souls, and this would become for us a new way of operating, a new way of understanding what you've invited us into, so that 1, we can avoid those other pitfalls, but 2, so that we can help others live out your dream for them in that soil 4, that good soil. Thank you for what you're gonna do. It's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. Hey, I'm gonna put myself out there. For those of you watching at Bedford, I'm sorry, I can't be in 2 places at once, but I'm gonna try something for the next couple of weeks. No worry if it doesn't work. I'm gonna be over here at one of these tables over here at the front to my right. If you have questions, they can be about anything. What we talked about today can be about anything else. Come over, let's talk. And we'll see. I won't keep you for more than a half an hour. We'll have a half an hour cutoff, okay? We're not gonna go beyond that, so we take every time. But if you have questions, thoughts, things you wanna talk about, I'll be over there. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Love you guys.